Wanted to take just a minute and talk about voting and some of the methods that are available for us to vote in the state of Missouri in this current election cycle. And when I say current election cycle, I'm speaking of 2020 and the August primary and the November general election. Um, I don't have, I'm not an expert. So what I'm doing is going to the source basically and sharing with you what is available there. We are on the Missouri Secretary of State website. And oh, by the way, this doesn't apply to you if you're not in Missouri. So we're just going to click on that elections and voting to take us to that area. And this is the landing page. And you can see there is some information out here about voting options and some links to some other stuff. We're going to look at some of that other stuff right now, in fact. And we're going to start with this absentee and mail-in ballot information for Missouri voters. Historically, the state of Missouri has only allowed absentee voting, and absentee voting has requirements attached to it. You basically have to certify that you're not going to be in town on election day, or that you're ill, or some other such excuse or reason. But for this election cycle, the state of Missouri is allowing mail-in ballots. And we're going to first look at absentee ballots and then look at mail-in ballots. And as we go through this, we'll talk about some of the differences. Again, here at this site, it gives some basic information. First about absentee ballots, tells you how to go about it. First of all, you need to complete an application to request a ballot. You can complete that application either in person at the at your local election office, county election office, or you can send that complete that application and send it in by mail, by email, or fax. And we'll see where you can get the documents that you would need, well, the application that you would need to send in if you were using one of those other methods. Once you've submitted the application, you should eventually get a ballot. Once you receive that ballot, you'll fill it out and have the envelope notarized if necessary. Again, because of COVID-19, there are some exceptions to having that ballot notarized, but also because of COVID-19, there's a situation where you might have to have that ballot notarized, and we'll see that here in just a second. And of course, the last step is return your ballot to your local election authority, and that can be done, again, absentee ballot, one of two ways. Either take it to your local election authority or put it in the mail. So let's look at the who is eligible to receive and use an absentee ballot. The classic reasons are this list down here: religious beliefs or practices, working as an election worker, incarceration if you're still eligible to vote, certified participation in the address confidentiality program, or your absence, again, you're out of town on election day. Also included in the classic or historical reasons is an incapacity or confinement due to illness. Now, the difference is that these down here require that the envelope be notarized. These reasons up here, you don't have to have a notary if you're eligible to use these reasons. Again, the classic reason is incapacity or confinement due to illness. In 2020, because of the coronavirus situation, they have added that either you've contracted the coronavirus or you're at risk of contracting the coronavirus because of any of these following reasons. Again, over 65, living in a long-term care facility, chronic lung disease, and so forth and so on. So if you meet any of these criteria in this first section, you can request an absentee ballot. And July 22nd at 5 p.m. is the latest you can make that request. You can request an absentee ballot, and if you're using these reasons, that ballot envelope will not have to be notarized. If you're using any other reason, the signature on your envelope is going to have to be notarized. Now, in St. Louis County, I know I was able, when I was working in the polls, I was able to take my envelope sealed back to the county election authority, and they verified the signature at the election authority. So I did not need a notary, but I still did need the signature validated. So, rule of thumb, if you're using any of these reasons, you want to have your envelope notarized. So we'll move on to the new reason or new eligibility, which is anybody, any registered voter in the state of Missouri, and again, that's any registered voter in the state of Missouri, can request a mail-in ballot. And the steps for that are you complete the application, and again, you can complete the application for the ballot either in person at your election office or by mail. Once you receive that ballot, you want to fill it out and have the return envelope notarized. And for the mail-in ballot, the only way you can return it is via U.S. mail, the ballot itself. Again, you can return the application in person, but the ballot itself is going to have to be mailed in. So who's eligible? Again, any registered voter is eligible for the mail-in ballot. And this kind of covers the process. And we can't emphasize enough, unlike absentee ballots, mail-in ballots must be mailed back through the U.S. mail. And in all cases, the envelope for a mail-in ballot has got to be notarized. So how do you go about requesting a ballot? Again, back here on the landing page for elections and votings under the Secretary of State website, there's 3 ballot requests out here. You've got a request for a Missouri mail-in ballot, which is a generic application, could be used for any election if they extend the mail-in voting beyond the 2020 election cycle. You got a request for an absentee ballot, which is again a generic request form that can be used for any election if they extend the mail-in voting beyond the 2020 election cycle. You can use these for the 2020 election cycle for either primary or general election. There's some caveats to it. I personally prefer this form, which we're going to take a look at, which is a combined application, and it is for the 2020 August primary. And we're loading. We'll get there eventually. So this form again is a combined form, and the type of request you make is going to be either one of these boxes for absentee ballot or this box for mail-in ballot. Even on the separate forms, this information in here would be the same. So basically, for the primary election, the state of Missouri requires that you select a party preference because in the state of Missouri, you can only, in the primary election in the state of Missouri, you can only vote within one party. So in other words, if you wanted to vote for the Constitution Party's candidates in that primary election to see which one of those candidates was going to go forward and compete in the general election, you would select Constitution Party. If you select nonpartisan, then the ballot that you get will be for issues only. And we'll see that, we'll show that here in a minute. But again, you fill out this top portion no matter which type of ballot you're requesting. And then for absentee ballot, again, you fill in the reason that you're requesting an absentee ballot. If you choose this incapacity or confinement due to illness, that includes that COVID-19 piece, and there's no notary required. If you choose any of these other boxes, then you're going to be required to have the envelope notarized or the signature on the envelope verified at the very least. Again, with the mail-in ballots, notary is the only option because you have to mail it in. With the absentee ballot, you got the option, and check with your local election authority. And let me say, you may have the option of just taking that completed ballot inside the envelope to your election authority and have them verify your signature. So that's this application. Again, this is a combined application that would apply to the August primary. So we want to next go to the local election authority contact information, and this is where you find out where to send your application. If you pick your county, it's going to give you the information as far as where to return your ballot request. There's also contact information, phone or fax, and if there was a website for your county, that would be listed here as well. And you can see that. Well, let's pick one of the bigger ones that we know has a website. Where's Jackson? So there you go. Again, you can pick whatever whatever county you live in, and then that will take you there. So you can also, there's a whole bunch of stuff you can do out here. You can find out where you vote at. You can view the candidates and issues, which is where we're going next. And again, see all kinds of other good information about voting in general. So I highly recommend this website, and I highly recommend this website to you. And I highly recommend that if there are people who are not aware of it or who are not internet savvy or don't get on the internet, that you share this information with them and make it available to them. You know, take them to the library, take them home with you, and sit down and run through this stuff if it's information that they need. We're going to jump in here real quick and look at candidates and issues, and we're just going to put in an address. It doesn't belong to us. Look, if I could spell, I'd be dangerous. So this is actually the address of my church, and if I lived at that address, which I don't, but other people in the neighborhood, this information would apply to. So the polling place for that address is 1600 Belt. The election date for the next address for that the next election for that address is August the 4th, and the registration deadline was July the 8th. Now, that could vary. Some elections, which are like municipal elections, sometimes there's ballot issues for one community and not for another. So this is where you find out if there's actually something in your area coming up in the next election cycle. If we click again on this View Candidates and Issues, this is where the meat is. We talked about party preference. If we choose nonpartisan, then all we're going to see is any issues on the ballot. Any other party preference we choose, we will see candidates that are vying for their party's position on the November general election ballot. So in other words, there's only under this Green Party, selection. There's only one person running for treasurer, so they would get that primary nomination and be able to go forward and be listed on the general election ballot in November as the Green Party candidate for treasurer. If there's multiple candidates under a party selection, then whoever wins in that particular office will go forward and be on the ballot in November. So that's a quick rundown of some of the things you can do on the Secretary of State website under elections and votings. Again, I highly recommend that we all become familiar with this. You can start out at sos.mo.gov, and it will take you to the basic Secretary of State website. And from there, if you select elections and votings and click on that, you get deeper into the stuff we just looked at. Take it with a grain of salt. Take it home. Use it. Vote. Be informed about who you're voting for. We probably should have looked just a little bit deeper, and we're going to see if we can get there real quick. View candidates and issues. Okay. What I failed to say is that now that I know who these candidates are, I can look them up on the internet and or other places and find out more about them, and then make my informed decision as to who I want to vote for. Hopefully this helps somebody. Have a great day.